The thunder cracked like a bullwhip across the darkening sky as Olivia Matthews dug her raw fingers deeper into the muddy earth, desperation driving her every movement despite the rain pelting her back and the swell of her 7-month belly. Each potato she unearthed was a small victory against starvation. Another day she and her unborn child might survive in this unforgiving territory of Colorado, 1876. Just a few more, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the howling wind that threatened to tear her threadbare shawl from her shoulders. The storm had come faster than she'd anticipated, rolling in from the mountains with a vengeance that matched her own stubborn determination. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating the small plot behind the ramshackle cabin she'd called home since her husband's death 3 months prior. The rain transformed from steady drizzle to punishing downpour in seconds. Olivia's fingers slipped on the handle of her spade, and she cursed softly as mud splattered across her already soaked dress. The baby kicked inside her, as if protesting the harsh conditions its mother endured. "I know, little one," she soothed, placing a muddy hand on her belly. "But we need these to get through the week." So focused was she on her desperate harvest that she didn't notice the approaching rider until the thunder of hooves mingled with the storm's rumble. She looked up, squinting through the rain, to see a tall figure on horseback approaching her potato patch. Instinctively, she reached for the small knife tucked in her belt. Since Daniel's passing, she'd learned to be wary of strangers, especially men who might see a widow alone as easy prey. The rider pulled his horse to a stop just yards from where she knelt in the mud. "Madam," a deep voice called out from beneath a wide-brimmed hat, "you ought not be out in this weather." Olivia rose unsteadily to her feet, one hand on her belly, the other clutching her pitiful sack of potatoes. "These won't dig themselves, mister," she called back, defiance in every word. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing a tall frame clad in worn denim and leather. He approached slowly, hands visible at his sides in a gesture of peace. When he stepped closer, Olivia could see a face weathered by sun and wind, with eyes that seemed to match the stormy sky above them. "Name's Zachary Reid," he said, removing his hat briefly despite the rain. "I was riding by when I spotted you." "No one should be out digging in this storm, especially not," his eyes dropped to her rounded belly, concern etching deeper lines around his mouth. "Especially not a woman in my condition," Olivia finished for him, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Mr. Reid, these potatoes are all that stand between us and hunger." Another crack of lightning illuminated the sky, this one close enough to make Zachary's horse whinny in fear. The man glanced at the darkening clouds, then back at Olivia. "Madam, that storm's turning nasty. You need shelter, proper shelter." He looked toward her cabin, its roof already beginning to leak in several places. "That won't keep you dry tonight." Olivia followed his gaze, her heart sinking as she watched water streaming through the gaps in her roof. The cabin had been barely habitable when Daniel was alive. After 3 months of trying to maintain it alone, it was failing fast. "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted, the truth of her words hitting her as hard as the rain on her shoulders. Zachary's eyes softened. "My ranch is just over that ridge. It's not much, but the roof doesn't leak, and I've got a stew that'll warm you through." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "No strings attached, madam. You can have my room, and I'll take the barn. I just can't ride away leaving you here." Olivia hesitated, clutching her sack of potatoes tighter. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not since Daniel had drawn his last breath, leaving her alone in this wilderness. Yet the baby kicked again, reminding her that her decisions no longer affected just herself. The sky opened up further, rain now coming down in sheets so thick she could barely see the man standing before her. Her cabin groaned under the onslaught, and a section of the already compromised roof gave way with a crack that was audible even over the storm. "Please, madam," Zachary said, extending a hand, "let me help you." Another kick from the baby seemed to make the decision for her. With a reluctant nod, Olivia reached out and took the stranger's calloused hand. "Olivia," she said, raising her voice over the storm. "Olivia Matthews." Zachary nodded, a small smile softening his weathered features. "Let's get you and your little one somewhere dry, Mrs. Matthews." With surprising gentleness, he helped her onto his horse, handling her as if she were made of fine china despite her mud-soaked appearance. He gathered her sack of potatoes and secured it to the saddle before mounting behind her, one arm carefully positioned around her waist to steady her. As they rode away from the crumbling cabin, Olivia couldn't help but glance back. Everything she and Daniel had built together was disappearing into the storm. Yet as Zachary guided the horse toward the promise of shelter, she felt something besides the fear and exhaustion that had been her constant companions these past months, a tiny flicker of hope, fragile as a newly struck match in this storm-ravaged night. The ride to Zachary's ranch was mercifully short, though each minute felt eternal to Olivia as she struggled to stay upright on the horse. The rain had soaked through every layer of her clothing, and shivers racked her body despite Zachary's warmth at her back. "Just over this rise," he assured her, his voice close to her ear to be heard above the storm. "Hold on a little longer." When the ranch house came into view, Olivia could have wept with relief. It wasn't grand by any measure, a modest wooden structure with a sturdy porch, and what appeared to be a small barn off to the side, but compared to her failing cabin, it looked like a palace. Zachary guided the horse directly to the covered porch, dismounting first before carefully helping Olivia down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground, stiff from the ride and weak from exhaustion. "Easy now," Zachary murmured, his strong hands steadying her. "Let's get you inside." The interior of the ranch house was simple but neat, with a stone fireplace along one wall and rough-hewn furniture that spoke of practicality rather than comfort. Yet a fire already burned in the hearth, casting warm light through the single room that served as both kitchen and living area. "You sit by the fire," Zachary instructed, pulling a chair closer to the warmth. "I'll see to the horse and bring in your potatoes." Olivia sank gratefully into the chair, extending her trembling hands toward the flames. The heat was glorious after the bone-chilling cold of the rain, and she found herself fighting to keep her eyes open as exhaustion threatened to overtake her. Zachary returned faster than she expected, bringing with him the smell of rain and horses. He set her sack of potatoes near the door and immediately moved to a trunk in the corner, from which he withdrew a woolen blanket. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," he said, draping the blanket over her shoulders. "I have a shirt and trousers that might fit you well enough until your things dry." Olivia clutched the blanket tighter, sudden uncertainty making her tense. Zachary seemed to sense her apprehension. "I'll wait outside on the porch while you change," he added quickly. "There's a screen in the corner you can use for privacy. I'll knock before coming back in." After he stepped outside, Olivia moved behind the folding screen and peeled off her sodden garments, which clung to her skin like a second layer. The clothes Zachary had provided were obviously his. The shirt was enormous on her frame, and she had to roll the trousers up several times, but they were blessedly dry and smelled of sunshine and soap. When Zachary returned, he brought a steaming pot from the outdoor kitchen shelter to the stove inside. "Rabbit stew," he explained, stirring the contents. "Nothing fancy, but it'll warm you from the inside out." Olivia watched him move about his kitchen with easy familiarity, noting the way he kept a respectful distance from where she sat. There was something reassuring in his measured movements, in the calm competence with which he prepared 2 bowls and placed a loaf of bread on the table. "Thank you," she said softly as he handed her a bowl. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Zachary settled into a chair across from her, his own bowl steaming before him. "No need for thanks. Couldn't leave you out there in that storm." He broke off a piece of bread and passed it to her. "Been ranching in these parts for 5 years now. Learned quick that folks need to look out for each other to survive." As they ate, Olivia found herself studying her unexpected host. Up close, she guessed him to be in his early 30s, perhaps 5 years older than herself. His face was tanned from long days under the sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he spoke. A scar ran along his jawline, disappearing beneath several days' worth of stubble. "Where are you from originally, Mr. Reid?" she asked, surprising herself with her curiosity. "Zachary, please," he corrected gently. "Texas originally, came north after the war looking for a fresh start." He took a sip from his cup. "And you, that accent tells me you're not Colorado-born." Olivia smiled faintly. "Boston. I met Daniel, my husband, when he came east for business. He painted such beautiful pictures of the frontier that I agreed to come west with him after we married." Her smile faded. The reality was somewhat different from his descriptions. Zachary nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The West has a way of breaking promises. It's beautiful but harsh." "Daniel died of fever 3 months ago," Olivia continued, the words still painful to speak aloud. "We'd been here just over a year. Long enough to build that cabin and plant some crops, but not long enough to." She trailed off, one hand moving unconsciously to her belly. "Not long enough to prepare for this," Zachary finished for her, his gaze gentle. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Matthews." "Olivia," she offered in return. "And thank you for your kindness tonight and for your sympathy." They finished their meal in companionable silence, the storm raging outside making the warmth of the ranch house feel all the more precious. When Olivia's eyelids began to droop, Zachary rose and showed her to the single bedroom at the back of the house. "You take the bed," he insisted. "I'll be fine on the floor by the fire." Too exhausted to argue, Olivia thanked him again and closed the door behind her. The bed was simple, a wooden frame with a straw-filled mattress, but after months of sleeping on a pallet on her cabin floor, it felt luxurious. She sank onto it gratefully, pulling the quilt up to her chin. As sleep claimed her, Olivia wondered at the strange turn her life had taken in just a few hours. From digging for survival in a storm to being sheltered by a kind stranger. For the first time since Daniel's death, she fell asleep without fear gnawing at her heart. Morning brought sunlight streaming through the small bedroom window, so bright and cheerful it seemed impossible that such a violent storm had swept through just hours before. Olivia woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings until memory returned. She dressed quickly in her own clothes, now dry if somewhat stiff, and made her way to the main room. Zachary was already up, she realized, hearing movement outside. Following the sounds, she stepped onto the porch to find him splitting wood with powerful, methodical strokes. He looked up at her approach, wiping sweat from his brow with a forearm. "Morning," he called. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Olivia admitted. "Thank you." Zachary set down his axe and walked toward her. In the clear light of morning, she could see him properly for the first time. His hair was a dark brown that the sun had streaked with lighter highlights, and his eyes were a startling blue against his tanned skin. He moved with the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own body, every motion purposeful. "I checked on your cabin this morning," he said, his expression turning serious. "Rode over at first light." Olivia's heart sank at his tone. "How bad is it?" "Bad," he confirmed. "That section of roof that gave way during the storm. It took part of the wall with it when it fell, and the creek behind your property has swelled enough to flood the root cellar." Olivia closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this new blow. She had known the cabin was failing, but had hoped to at least have shelter until the baby came. "I see," she said quietly. "Well, I appreciate your hospitality, but I should get back. Perhaps some of it can be salvaged." Zachary shook his head. "Mrs. Matthews, Olivia, that cabin isn't safe, especially not for a woman in your condition. Another strong wind and what's left might come down entirely." "I have nowhere else to go," she repeated her words from the night before, frustration making her voice sharp. "Unless you know of someone in need of a pregnant widow with few skills beyond basic farming." "Stay here," Zachary said, the words seeming to surprise him as much as they did her. "At least until you've had the baby and recovered enough to make proper plans." Olivia stared at him, searching his face for any sign of improper intent, but found only earnest concern. Still, she hesitated. "I couldn't impose like that. You've already done more than enough." "It's not an imposition," he insisted. I've got the space, and to be honest, I could use the help around the place. Nothing strenuous, he added quickly. But there are plenty of tasks suitable for your condition that would make my life easier. He gestured to the house behind them, and I'd sleep in the barn, of course. Your reputation would be safe. Olivia considered his offer, weighing her limited options. Return to a dangerous, partially collapsed cabin, try to make it to the nearest town 15 miles away in her condition, or accept the generosity of this stranger who had already shown her nothing but kindness. If I stay, she said slowly, I would insist on earning my keep. I'm not looking for charity. Zachary nodded, respect evident in his expression. Wouldn't dream of offering it. I meant what I said about needing help. Been managing this place alone since my partner moved on to California last year. It's too much for one person. Still she hesitated, years of proper Boston upbringing warning against such an unconventional arrangement. Yet something in Zachary's straightforward manner reassured her. Very well, she finally agreed. Until the baby comes, at least, then we can reassess. Relief crossed Zachary's features. Good, that's good, he gestured toward the house. There's coffee on the stove and biscuits in the oven. We can ride to your cabin later to collect whatever belongings can be salvaged. That afternoon, they did exactly that. The damage was even worse than Zachary had described. The cabin that had been her home, however humble, now stood broken and exposed to the elements. Water had saturated most of her meager possessions, but they managed to rescue a trunk containing Daniel's clothes, which she had been unable to part with, a few cooking implements, and a small wooden box that held her most precious keepsakes, her wedding ring, too tight now for her swollen fingers, a daguerreotype of her parents, and letters from her sister in Boston. As they loaded these items onto Zachary's wagon, Olivia felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. Grief for another piece of Daniel slipping away, relief that she and her unborn child would have secure shelter. We can come back for the rest once it's had a chance to dry out, Zachary offered, watching her face closely. Olivia shook her head. There's nothing else worth saving. She placed a protective hand on her belly. Everything that matters is coming with us. The following weeks established a routine that brought unexpected comfort to Olivia's life. True to his word, Zachary moved his bedding to the small loft in the barn, insisting she take the house's only bedroom. Each morning, she would wake to find the fire already lit and coffee brewing, Zachary having risen before dawn to tend to the ranch's few cattle and his 2 horses. She took over the cooking and mending, tasks she could manage despite her advancing pregnancy. To her surprise, she discovered Zachary had a vegetable garden larger than her potato patch had been, but sadly neglected due to his other responsibilities. She threw herself into reviving it, finding solace in the familiar work of coaxing life from soil. You've got a gift with growing things, Zachary commented one evening as they ate a stew made with vegetables from her revitalized garden. That plot hasn't produced so well since my mother was alive to tend it. Olivia looked up, surprised. Your mother lived here with you. Zachary nodded, his expression softening with memory. She and my father started this place. After Pa died in '68, she kept it going until her heart gave out 3 years ago. He gestured around the simple room. Everything here was built by their hands, mostly. You never married. The question slipped out before Olivia could consider its propriety. If Zachary was offended, he didn't show it. Never found the time, he said with a small smile. Or maybe the right woman. Ranching doesn't leave much opportunity for courting. Olivia found herself studying him across the table, seeing him with new eyes. In the weeks they had lived in this unusual arrangement, she had come to appreciate his quiet strength, his unfailing kindness, and his respect for her independence. He never treated her as fragile, despite her condition, but was always ready with a helping hand when tasks proved too much for her. What about you? He asked, interrupting her thoughts. How did a Boston lady end up married to a frontier man? Olivia smiled at the memory. Daniel came to Boston selling parcels of land out west. He was magnetic, full of dreams and grand ideas. Her smile turned wistful. My parents were horrified when I agreed to marry him after knowing him only 2 months, even more so when I agreed to come west. Do they know about your situation now? Zachary asked gently. Olivia shook her head. I wrote after Daniel died, but haven't received a reply. The mail is so unreliable out here, I'm not sure if they ever got my letter. She sighed. Or perhaps they're still angry that I chose this life. My father warned me I was being foolish. Was he right? Zachary's question held no judgment, only curiosity. Olivia considered this, her hand resting on her belly where the baby moved restlessly. Sometimes I think so, she admitted. Especially after Daniel died, but then. She looked around the warm kitchen at the man sitting across from her and felt a surprising contentment. But then I remember the moments of beauty out here, the sunset over the mountains, the first sprouts in spring, the freedom to shape one's own destiny. Zachary's eyes held hers, something unspoken passing between them. The West takes much, but it gives gifts too if you know how to look for them. The moment stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with something neither was ready to name. It was Olivia who finally broke it, rising to clear their plates. I found some wild berries near the creek today, she said, her voice deliberately light. I thought I might make a pie tomorrow if that would suit you. That would suit me just fine, Zachary replied, a smile warming his features. Though you shouldn't be walking so far in your condition. The creek is hardly far, Olivia protested. And the walking is good for me. The midwife in town told Daniel that before he. She trailed off, the mention of her husband creating a familiar pang of grief, though she noticed with some surprise that the pain was less sharp than it had been. You've seen the midwife in Willow Creek? Zachary asked, seeming to deliberately shift the conversation. Olivia nodded. Once, when we first learned about the baby, she gave me some advice, but we couldn't afford for her to attend the birth. She tried to keep her voice steady, but couldn't quite hide the fear that crept in when she thought about facing childbirth alone. Zachary must have heard it, for his expression grew serious. You won't be alone when your time comes, he promised. I'll make sure Mrs. Holloway is here to help you. Mrs. Holloway? Olivia questioned. The midwife, Zachary explained. I've known her for years. She delivered most of the children in these parts, including me. He smiled at Olivia's surprised look. I was born right here in this house, with Mrs. Holloway's mother attending my own mother. The thought of having a skilled midwife present lifted a weight from Olivia's shoulders that she hadn't fully acknowledged carrying. Thank you, she said simply, unable to express the depth of her gratitude with words. Zachary waved away her thanks. No need for that between friends. The word settled comfortably between them, accurate yet somehow insufficient for what was growing in this shared space. As her pregnancy advanced into its final weeks, Olivia found herself watching Zachary when he didn't notice, observing the careful way he mended fence posts, the gentleness with which he handled newborn calves, the concentration in his face as he read one of the few books he owned by lamplight in the evening. Each observation added another layer to her understanding of this man, who had become so central to her daily existence. For his part, Zachary seemed equally aware of her, anticipating her needs before she voiced them, making subtle accommodations for her increasing discomfort without drawing attention to her limitations. He built a rocking chair that appeared one day on the porch. Just something I've been meaning to make, he claimed, though Olivia suspected it was specifically for her benefit. One evening, as summer gave way to early autumn and her time grew nearer, Olivia sat in that very chair watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Zachary joined her, leaning against the porch railing with a cup of coffee in his hands. Beautiful, he commented, though when Olivia glanced up, she found his eyes on her rather than the spectacular view. A flush warmed her cheeks and she looked away quickly, confused by her reaction. She was a widow, still carrying her dead husband's child. It wasn't right to feel this flutter in her chest when Zachary looked at her this way. Penny for your thoughts, he said softly. Olivia smoothed her hands over her enormous belly, gathering courage. I was thinking about what happens after, she admitted, after the baby comes. Zachary set down his coffee cup. What do you want to happen? It was the first time either of them had directly addressed the temporary nature of their arrangement, though Olivia had thought of little else these past days. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I can't go back to the cabin even if it could be repaired. I don't have the means." "You could stay here," Zachary said, the words coming quickly as if he'd rehearsed them. "Not just until you recover, but after, permanently." Olivia's heart quickened. "As your housekeeper, you mean?" Zachary shook his head, pushing away from the railing to kneel beside her rocking chair. "No, Olivia, not as my housekeeper." He took a deep breath. "These past weeks, having you here, it's like the ranch has come alive again, like I've come alive again." Olivia stared at him, scarcely daring to breathe. "Zachary, I know it's too soon," he hurried on. "I know you're still grieving Daniel and the baby will be here any day. I'm not asking for promises now, just consider the possibility of us." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, unexpected emotion closing her throat. "I don't know what to say." Zachary reached out, tentatively taking her hand in his. "You don't have to say anything now, just know that you have a place here with me for as long as you want it. In whatever capacity feels right to you." Before Olivia could respond, a sharp pain seized her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch at her belly. Zachary's expression immediately shifted from hopeful to alarmed. "Olivia, what is it?" She breathed through the pain, recognizing what was happening with a mixture of excitement and fear. "I think," she said when she could speak again, "that your timing is impeccable, Mr. Reid. The baby has decided to join our conversation." Zachary's eyes widened. "The baby, now." He leapt to his feet. "I'll get the wagon ready. Mrs. Holloway said to fetch her at the first signs." Olivia nodded, another contraction building. "Hurry," she managed, "but be careful. The mountain road is treacherous after dark." As Zachary rushed to prepare the wagon, Olivia closed her eyes, one hand still pressed to her belly. "Not yet, little one," she whispered. "Wait for Mrs. Holloway, and give me time to figure out what my heart is trying to tell me about your mother and the kind cowboy who put a roof over our heads." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Zachary helped Olivia inside and made her comfortable on the bed before riding out for Mrs. Holloway, promising to return as quickly as possible. Left alone, Olivia paced the small bedroom between contractions, trying to remember everything she'd been told about childbirth. Her labor progressed steadily, the pains coming closer together as the night deepened. She found herself talking to Daniel as if he were present, asking for his blessing, telling him about the life she and their child had found in this unexpected place. "I think you would like him," she whispered during a brief respite between contractions. "He's a good man, Daniel. Solid and true, like you always wanted to be." By the time the sound of approaching horses reached her, Olivia was gripping the bedpost, sweat dampening her nightgown as a particularly powerful contraction tore through her. The door burst open, and a stout woman with iron-gray hair pinned in a severe bun strode in, already rolling up her sleeves. "Well now, Mrs. Matthews," she said briskly, "looks like this little one is eager to meet the world. Let's see how you're progressing." Zachary hovered in the doorway, his face pale with concern. "Is she all right?" Mrs. Holloway shot him a stern look. "She's doing what women have done since Eve, Mr. Reid. Now make yourself useful and boil some water, then wait outside like a proper gentleman." Despite her pain, Olivia couldn't help but smile at the midwife's no-nonsense manner. As another contraction built, she caught Zachary's eye and gave him a small nod of reassurance. He nodded back, his expression a mixture of worry and something that looked remarkably like love before he disappeared to follow Mrs. Holloway's instructions. The hours that followed tested Olivia's strength and resolve like nothing in her life before. Mrs. Holloway proved to be as skilled as Zachary had claimed, guiding Olivia through the increasingly intense contractions with firm kindness. Outside, Olivia could hear Zachary pacing the porch, his footsteps a comforting rhythm in the night. As dawn broke over the mountains, casting the bedroom in gentle golden light, Olivia gave one final, tremendous push, and her child entered the world with a lusty cry that spoke of healthy lungs and a fighting spirit. "A fine boy, Mrs." Holloway announced, efficiently cleaning and wrapping the infant before placing him in Olivia's trembling arms. Strong and whole, just like his mama. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she gazed at her son. He had a shock of dark hair like Daniel's, but when he briefly opened his eyes, she caught a flash of blue that reminded her of the Colorado sky and of Zachary. "He's perfect," she whispered, touching the tiny fingers that curled around her own. Mrs. Holloway smiled, her stern demeanor softening. "That he is, what will you call him?" Olivia considered this, looking down at the miracle in her arms. "David," she decided, "after my father." It felt right to honor her family, a connection to her past even as she contemplated a future she had never expected. "A good, strong name, Mrs. Holloway approved. "Now shall I call in the anxious cowboy before he wears a hole in that porch?" At Olivia's nod, the midwife went to the door and beckoned Zachary inside. He entered cautiously, his eyes immediately finding Olivia and the bundle in her arms. "Come meet David," Olivia invited softly. Zachary approached the bed with reverence, his usual confidence replaced by wonder. "He's so small," he marveled, carefully sitting on the edge of the bed. "Would you like to hold him?" Olivia offered, surprising herself with the suggestion. Zachary looked momentarily panicked. "I don't know how. What if I hurt him?" Mrs. Holloway snorted from where she was tidying up. "Nonsense. You've delivered calves and foals. A human baby is much the same, just more precious cargo." With the midwife's guidance, Zachary awkwardly accepted the newborn, his large hands seemingly enormous around the tiny form. But he cradled David with such tenderness that Olivia felt her heart expand in her chest, making room for feelings she had thought buried with Daniel. "Hello, David," Zachary whispered to the infant. "Welcome to the world, little man." He looked up at Olivia, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "He's magnificent, like his mother." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Olivia. In that moment, with the three of them together in the soft morning light, she could see a future unfolding, one filled with possibilities she had thought lost forever. Mrs. Holloway cleared her throat, breaking the intimate tableau. "I'll leave you three to get acquainted while I prepare something for the new mother to eat. She needs her strength." With a knowing look between Olivia and Zachary, the midwife excused herself. Left alone with Zachary and her newborn son, Olivia felt a curious peace settle over her. The past months had been filled with hardship and uncertainty, yet somehow they had led her here to this moment of quiet joy. "Thank you," she said simply. Zachary looked up from the baby's face. "For what?" "For finding me in that storm, for giving us shelter, for—" She hesitated, then continued, "For showing me that life goes on, even when you think it can't possibly." Zachary carefully returned David to her arms, then reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face. The gentle touch sent warmth spreading through her. "I meant what I said yesterday," he told her softly, "about you staying, about us." Olivia looked down at her son, then back at the man who had become so dear to her in such a short time. "I can't make any promises yet," she said honestly, "but I'd like to stay. To see if what I'm feeling might grow into something more." The smile that spread across Zachary's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "That's all I can ask for," he said. "Time and a chance." As David drifted to sleep in her arms, Olivia found herself smiling back, hope blooming in her heart like the first green shoots after a long winter. The weeks following David's birth were a blur of exhaustion and joy for Olivia. Mrs. Holloway stayed for 3 days, instructing her in the care of her newborn before returning to town with a promise to check on them in a fortnight. Zachary proved to be an unexpected source of support during those early days. He took on extra chores without complaint, prepared simple meals when Olivia was too tired to cook, and even walked the floor with David during particularly fussy nights, allowing her precious hours of uninterrupted sleep. "You don't have to do all this," Olivia protested one evening as Zachary returned from settling David in the cradle he had crafted. "He's not your responsibility." Zachary joined her at the table where she sat drinking tea. "Maybe not," he agreed. "But you both matter to me, and that makes helping a privilege, not a burden." His simple declaration warmed her more than the tea. In the month since David's birth, Zachary had been unfailingly patient, never pressing her for decisions about their future, yet making it clear through actions rather than words that his feelings remained unchanged. Autumn progressed, painting the surrounding hills in brilliant colors before giving way to the first cold winds of approaching winter. David grew stronger each day, his personality emerging in gummy smiles and bright-eyed curiosity about the world around him. One crisp November morning, Olivia bundled David against the chill and walked with him to the small rise behind the ranch house. It had become a ritual of sorts, this private time with her son, where she would tell him stories about his father and the life they had planned. "Your papa would be so proud of you," she murmured, watching David's eyes track the movement of leaves dancing on the breeze. "You have his determination. I see it when you try to lift your head, so serious and focused." From this vantage point, she could see Zachary working in the corral below, breaking a young horse with patient, methodical movements. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, raising a hand in greeting. Olivia returned the gesture, a now familiar flutter in her chest. "And Mr. Reid," she continued to David, "has been very kind to us, hasn't he? More than kind." She stroked her son's cheek thoughtfully. "I think perhaps it's time I answered the question he asked the night you decided to join us." That evening, after David had been fed and settled for his first stretch of sleep, Olivia found Zachary on the porch, whittling by the light of a lantern. He looked up as she stepped outside, setting aside his work. "Everything all right?" he asked. Olivia nodded, drawing her shawl closer against the evening chill. "David's sleeping. I thought perhaps we could talk." Something in her tone must have alerted him to the importance of the moment, for Zachary straightened in his chair, giving her his full attention. "Of course." Olivia took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Before David was born, you asked me to consider a future here, with you." Zachary nodded, his expression carefully neutral though his eyes betrayed his hope. "I remember. I've been thinking about it a lot." Olivia moved closer, perching on the edge of the chair beside his. "When I first met you, I was at my lowest point, alone, afraid, with no idea how I would provide for my child." She smiled softly. "You literally put a roof over my head when I needed it most." "Anyone would have done the same," Zachary demurred. Olivia shook her head. "No, they wouldn't. What you did, what you've continued to do, speaks to the kind of man you are, Zachary Reid." She reached out hesitantly, placing her hand over his. "The kind of man I could see myself building a life with." Zachary went very still, his eyes searching hers. "Olivia, are you saying—" "I'm saying yes," she confirmed, her voice steadying with certainty. "Yes to staying, yes to us seeing where these feelings between us might lead." She squeezed his hand gently. "I can't promise that I'm ready for everything all at once. I'm still healing, still finding my way, but I know that I want that path to include you." The joy that spread across Zachary's features was like nothing Olivia had ever seen. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a reverent kiss to her knuckles. "That's more than enough for me," he assured her. "We have all the time in the world." The months that followed saw a gradual transformation of their relationship. Zachary moved back into the house, though he insisted on sleeping in the main room to preserve propriety. Their days fell into a comfortable rhythm, Zachary tending to the ranch work, while Olivia cared for David and maintained the household, the three of them coming together for meals and quiet evenings that increasingly felt like family time. Winter descended on the Colorado highlands with a vengeance, blanketing the ranch in snow and limiting their contact with the outside world. Yet Olivia found she didn't mind the isolation. The ranch house, which had seemed so modest when she first arrived, had become a haven of warmth and safety, filled with David's growing vocalizations and Zachary's deep laughter. It was during one particularly fierce blizzard, with wind howling around the eaves and snow piling against the windows, that their relationship deepened further. David, now 4 months old, had finally settled after a bout of fussiness, leaving Olivia and Zachary alone by the fire. "I've been meaning to give you something," Zachary said, rising from his chair to retrieve a small package from the shelf above the fireplace. I've been working on it for a while. Curious, Olivia unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a small wooden box, exquisitely carved with a pattern of wildflowers that she recognized from the meadow near the creek. Opening it, she found a simple silver ring nestled inside. "It's not fancy," Zachary said, suddenly appearing nervous. "I traded some work for old Mrs. Wilson's silver teapot. She had no use for it anymore and had the blacksmith in town melt it down. The design is my own work, though." Olivia lifted the ring, admiring the delicate pattern etched into the band the same wildflowers that adorned the box. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's a promise," Zachary explained, kneeling before her chair. "Not a proposal, not yet, but a token of my intentions when you're ready." He took her free hand in his. "I love you, Olivia Matthews. You and David have brought joy back into my life in ways I never thought possible." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as emotions she had been slowly acknowledging over these past months crystallized into certainty. "I love you too," she whispered, the words both frightening and freeing. "I wasn't looking for love again. I thought that part of my life was over, but you," she smiled through her tears, "you showed me otherwise." Zachary's face illuminated with happiness. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was tender yet full of promise. Olivia responded in kind, her heart soaring with newfound joy. When they parted, Zachary slipped the ring onto her finger, not on her left hand, but her right. "A promise," he repeated. "For now," Olivia nodded, understanding the significance. "For now," she agreed, "but not, I think, for long." Spring arrived with a rush of green that transformed the landscape around the ranch. As the snow melted and the days lengthened, David began to crawl, exploring his expanding world with determined curiosity. Zachary built a sturdy fence around the garden to keep the adventurous infant contained, and Olivia planted vegetables with renewed enthusiasm, now certain they would be here to harvest them. It was on a mild day in early May, almost exactly a year since Zachary had found her digging potatoes in the storm, that Olivia made her decision. She had just put David down for his afternoon nap when she heard the familiar sound of Zachary returning from checking the far pasture. She met him on the porch, taking in his wind-blown appearance with affection. Over the winter, her feelings for him had deepened into something solid and sure, different from what she had felt for Daniel, but no less profound. "How are the new calves?" she asked as he hung his hat on the peg by the door. "Growing fast," Zachary replied, washing his hands in the basin she had prepared. "The spotted one you liked has taken to following her mother everywhere, stubborn little thing." Olivia smiled, recognizing the fondness in his voice. Zachary's care for the animals in his charge was one of the many qualities she had come to love about him. "I've been thinking," she said, joining him as he sat on the porch steps. "A dangerous pastime," he teased, slipping an arm around her waist. Such casual affection had become natural between them in recent weeks. Olivia leaned into his embrace, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I was thinking that it's time." Zachary went still beside her. "Time," she turned to face him, taking his weathered hands in hers. "Time for that promise to become something more, if you still want it to." The hope that dawned in Zachary's eyes was answer enough, but his words confirmed it. "Are you sure? I don't want to rush you." "I'm sure," Olivia affirmed. "I've had time to grieve, to heal, to know my own heart." "And my heart is here with you." She glanced toward the house where David slept. "Both of you." Without another word, Zachary pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying everything words could not: gratitude, joy, and a love that had grown from compassion to become the foundation of their shared life. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Willow Creek with Mrs. Holloway and a handful of neighbors as witnesses. David, resplendent in a new gown Olivia had sewn for the occasion, gurgled happily in the midwife's arms as his mother promised to love and honor the man who had saved them both in more ways than one. "I, Zachary James Reid, take you, Olivia Catherine Matthews, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Zachary vowed, his voice steady and sure as he slipped her promise ring onto her left hand, joining it with the simple gold band they had chosen together. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. As Olivia repeated the sacred words, she felt Daniel's memory as a gentle presence, not a shadow. He had given her David, had brought her west to this land of harsh beauty and unexpected joy. And though their time together had been cut short, she knew he would approve of the family she and Zachary were creating together. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Zachary's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. As they turned to face their small gathering of well-wishers, Olivia caught Mrs. Holloway dabbing suspiciously at her eyes. "Never thought I'd see the day Zachary Reid settled down," the midwife commented as she handed David back to Olivia. "But I can't think of a better match. You both deserve this happiness." The celebration that followed was simple but joyous. They shared a meal at the town's only restaurant before returning to the ranch, their home as husband and wife. That evening, after David had been settled in his crib, moved to a small adjoining room Zachary had built during the winter, Olivia stood nervously in the bedroom doorway, watching as her new husband turned down the covers. Despite their growing closeness over the past months, this final intimacy still felt momentous. Zachary seemed to sense her apprehension, for he approached slowly, taking her hands in his. "We can wait if you're not ready," he offered, his eyes gentle in the lamplight. Olivia shook her head, love for this thoughtful man overwhelming her. "I don't want to wait," she assured him. It's been a long time, and only ever with Daniel." Understanding dawned in Zachary's expression. "We'll go as slowly as you need," he promised, brushing a tender kiss across her forehead. "We have the rest of our lives, after all." His words calmed her racing heart. The rest of their lives, such a simple phrase, yet so full of promise. With newfound confidence, Olivia reached up to touch his face, tracing the scar along his jawline that she had come to know as well as her own features. "I love you, Zachary Reid," she whispered. His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "And I love you, Olivia Reid." The name, her new name, settled around her like a cherished blanket. As Zachary drew her into his arms, Olivia surrendered to the love they had found together. A love born in the most unlikely of circumstances, when a pregnant woman digging for potatoes in a storm found not just shelter, but a home for her heart beneath the roof a kind cowboy provided. The years that followed were filled with the rich tapestry of family life on the frontier. David grew from a curious infant into a sturdy toddler with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. He took his first steps across the ranch house floor, chasing after the kitten Zachary had brought home to keep the mice at bay, though Olivia suspected it was as much a gift for their son as a practical addition to the household. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Zachary's cattle herd expanded, while Olivia's garden provided abundant vegetables that she preserved for winter and sold in town for extra income. Together, they built a second bedroom onto the house, planning for the future with quiet optimism. That future expanded sooner than they anticipated. Just after David's second birthday, Olivia discovered she was expecting again. The news brought both joy and anxiety. Joy for the growing family they had created together, anxiety at the memories of her difficult first labor. "This time will be different," Zachary assured her, holding her close as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "You're not alone now," and he was right. Throughout her pregnancy, Zachary was a constant presence, sharing the workload and ensuring she rested when needed. David, not quite understanding what was happening but excited by the anticipation in the household, patted her growing belly with gentle hands, already protective of his sibling. When Olivia's time came, it was indeed different. Mrs. Holloway arrived well before the birth, having been summoned at the first signs of labor. Zachary remained close, holding Olivia's hand through the contractions, his steady presence anchoring her through the pain. Their daughter arrived as dawn broke, her lusty cries filling the bedroom where her brother had been born 2 years before. They named her Grace Catherine Reid, honoring both Zachary's grandmother and Olivia's middle name. "She's perfect," Zachary whispered, cradling his newborn daughter with a confidence he had lacked with David. "Just like her mother." Olivia watched them, her heart so full it felt it might burst. From the darkest moment of her life, widowed, pregnant, and desperate in a storm, had come this abundance of love and family she could never have imagined. David, allowed in to meet his sister after Mrs. Holloway had tidied everything, approached the bed with solemn curiosity. "Baby?" he asked, pointing to the bundle in his mother's arms. "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia confirmed. "This is your sister, Grace. Would you like to say hello?" David nodded seriously, climbing onto the bed with Zachary's help. He peered at the tiny face visible among the blankets, then looked up at his parents with wide eyes. "My baby," Zachary laughed, ruffling his son's dark hair. "That's right, partner, your baby sister, and you're going to help us take care of her, aren't you?" David nodded again, his expression brightening with this important responsibility. "I help." As Olivia watched her husband and son together, both so gentle with the newest member of their family, she felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what she had been searching for all along, perhaps even before she knew it, not just survival, but belonging. A home built not of timber and nails, but of love and shared purpose. The seasons turned, bringing changes both expected and surprising. David started school in town, riding beside Zachary on his own pony, a gift for his 6th birthday. Grace grew into a spirited girl with her mother's auburn hair and a love for stories that kept Olivia busy inventing new tales each evening. 3 years after Grace's birth, the Reid family welcomed another son, whom they named William after Zachary's father. The ranch expanded to match their growing family, with a larger house built beside the original cabin, which was preserved as a reminder of their beginnings. Olivia never forgot that desperate night in the storm, when a kind cowboy had offered shelter to a pregnant widow with nothing but a sack of hard-won potatoes to her name. Sometimes, on stormy evenings when the family gathered around the fire in their comfortable home, she would catch Zachary's eye across the room and know he was remembering too. "No regrets?" he would ask in quiet moments, still sometimes amazed by the life they had built together. And Olivia would smile, watching their children play, feeling the solid foundation of love beneath their feet. "Not one," she would reply truthfully. "Every step, even the painful ones, led us here." On the 10th anniversary of their first meeting, Zachary surprised Olivia with a special gift, a small garden plot specifically for potatoes, enclosed by a sturdy fence with a sign that read, "Olivia's Potatoes," where our story began. "You sentimental fool," she teased, though tears of happiness glistened in her eyes. Zachary pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'll never forget finding you there in the rain, so fierce and determined. I think I started falling in love with you right then, though I was too stubborn to admit it." Olivia laughed, leaning into his embrace. "And I thought you were interfering and presumptuous." "I was," Zachary conceded with a grin. "Luckily, you gave me a chance to be something more." "The best decision I ever made," Olivia said softly, turning in his arms to face him. At 35, her face had gained a few lines around her eyes and mouth, lines of laughter and experience, but to Zachary, she was more beautiful than ever. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't ridden by that day?" he asked, a rare note of vulnerability in his voice. Olivia considered this, her expression growing serious. "Sometimes. But then I look at our children, at our home, at you." She reached up to touch his face, now as familiar to her as her own. "And I know that we were meant to find each other, that even in the darkest storm there was a light guiding us together." That evening, as they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a desperate woman digging for potatoes in a storm to the matriarch of a thriving ranch and family, her life had transformed in ways she could never have predicted. Yet the most profound change had been within her heart, the healing of old wounds, the discovery that love could bloom again, different but no less beautiful than before. Zachary had not replaced Daniel in her heart, but had created his own space there, expanding her capacity for love rather than diminishing her past. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple that still took her breath away after all these years, Zachary took her hand. His thumb brushing over the rings, she wore both the promise ring that had become her wedding band and the simple gold one that had joined it. "Happy anniversary, my love," he murmured. Olivia squeezed his hand, gratitude filling her chest. "Thank you," she said simply. "For the potato garden?" Zachary asked with a smile. Olivia shook her head, her eyes meeting his. "For everything, for the roof over my head that night. For giving me and David a home when we had nothing, for loving me back to life." Zachary's expression softened with understanding. "You did the same for me," he told her. "This place was just a house before you came, you made it a home." As their children's laughter floated across the evening air, David, now a lanky 12-year-old, Grace a spirited 9, and William a robust 6, Olivia knew with certainty that some storms in life brought not destruction, but unexpected blessings. From the darkest night had come the brightest dawn. From desperate need had grown abundant love. And from a chance encounter in a raging storm had emerged a family bound not by circumstance, but by choice, every day choosing each other, choosing love, choosing the life they had built together beneath the vast Colorado sky.